Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be doing a subscriber Q&A. If you're new to the channel, this is where you guys submit your questions in the comment section, Instagram or email. Now, try to stay away from Facebook just because there is a major delay in getting messages in. So with that, I like to take some of these questions and just make quick videos on them, not only helping you, but also anybody else who might be going through the same problem. So today we're going to be getting a question from Lisa. Looks like she's having an issue with her alkalinity. Apparently it was a bad batch of Alpha Reef, and we're going to kind of troubleshoot and hopefully get her tank back on track. So with that, her question is, hey, I got a couple questions. My alk got up to 22. Apparently I got a bad batch of Alpha Reef, all plants, algae, including coralline, dead, mushrooms, Montipora cap, bubble tip anemones, all gone. I got parameters back on track, so that's good. Would you recommend ProBio, Dr. Tim's, or just a hearty dose of pods and phytoplankton? Now, just a heads up, I have no experience with Alpha Reef other than when I do one-on-ones and consultations with you guys. A lot of you are using that product and have zero issues. I haven't heard of anybody getting a bad batch or overdosing it, so I can't really give you my opinion on Alpha Reef and anything like that. I try not to talk about or give my opinion or kind of dive too deep into products that I haven't used because it's not really fair for the company or anybody else just because I haven't used them. So I'm going to stay away from the Alpha Reef Alpha Reef thing because maybe you did get a bad batch and that sucks. But I would also just double check to make sure your dosing system is intact. There's no issues, no clogs, or no pumps going out of control or any malfunctions with that. So a lot of you guys are putting that on auto doser, so just kind of address that. That's basically as far as I'm going to go regarding the Alpha Reef dosing. So with that being said, you killed pretty much everything in the tank with the alkalinity spike, which is to be pretty common. I mean, 20 plus ppm of alkalinity is no joke, given that a acceptable range is what, 7 to 12 most of the time. A lot of people are around 8 to 9.5 is really common. I know I personally like to keep my reef tank at about 8.5, 9. Sometimes you get to 9.5, but yeah, that's pretty high, and I don't foresee really any corals surviving. Now, you didn't mention anything about fish. I've had people in the past have higher alkalinity. Guys, listen, I've never gotten to 20 parts per million of alkalinity, so I don't have any experience with that. But there has been people who've gotten up to 15, 16, 18, and their fish survived. So you didn't say anything about fish death, so I'm assuming that they're still alive. Now, with that, when it comes to the pod population and stuff like that, if you want to introduce pods again, it doesn't hurt. A lot of people like to do that stuff just in general to introduce pods. If you have a thriving refugium, which you said that your plants died, so your macroalgae and all that stuff died. So once you get your refugium growing again, you get the macroalgae in there, then that's when I would dose the pods, because you want to give them a place to survive. I wouldn't just dump them in the main display. I'd actually dump the majority of them in the refugium with actively growing coralline or macroalgae. That way they have a place to kind of hide and reproduce, and you don't have to keep dosing that stuff. And so as long as you got macroalgae growing in the sump, you're definitely good to go ahead and reintroduce some pods. And one bottle should be fine. You don't really need to go out of control and buy a ton of it or dose it every week or so, like a lot of people like to do that stuff. With that, I would also Dr. Tim's, you didn't say what type of Dr. Tim's you were looking at, like a probiotic or anything like that. I don't really think you need to introduce anything like that to the tank. I think at this point, given that a lot of stuff died and you're kind of resetting the system, I think the pods will be fine. I think just letting the tank naturally kind of get back to normal with water changes and just kind of keeping the water parameter stable, I think you're going to be fine with that. Outside of that, if you want to dose Phyto, I guess the Phyto will help the pod population, but pods aren't the end all be all of a reef tank. To be honest with you, I really don't even think about them. I don't really consider them for anything. I don't dose them. I don't do anything like that. Of course, I do have them living in the refugium. I have dosed pods, copepods and amphipods and all that stuff in the past. I've done it, for promos and to help people out. But outside of that, they're not something that I really think about. As long as you got macroalgae growing, you should have pods in there, good to go. If you don't have a mandarin, they're really not something you have to be concerned about. But yeah, so phytoplankton, again, part of the pod population. It does benefit coral in the long run and all that kind of stuff. But since you're starting over, you don't have any coral really growing in the tank. I don't think phyto is really that necessary. So outside of that, Lisa, I think if you just keep it simple, keep it basic, find out maybe you did have a bad batch of Alpha Reef, but I would definitely double check your dosing system, make sure that is intact, just in case there was a malfunction or something like that. Outside of that, I just let the tank be normal. These kind of crashes are very difficult to deal with. Of course, getting all the dead coral out of there, kind of getting the system a little stable. Make sure if any fish did pass away, you're trying to get those carcasses out. Any kind of dead snails and all that kind of stuff, you want to get that out because it's just going to rot and add to the nitrates and phosphates, and then you'll have to deal with like algae and things like that. So resetting the tank and just letting the natural processes take place is probably your best bet. Keep consistent water changes and just let the tank go back to normal, and then I would consider adding corals and kind of going about that. So hopefully this helps you. I do apologize for the death. It's one of those things that I think some things could be put in place, some backup measures, having an apex that can turn off a dosing pump if the alkalinity gets too high, sending warnings and stuff to you if the alkalinity again gets too high or the temperature drops too low or things like that. Having systems in place that can warn you early on before it gets out of control is something that I would consider. When I look at these types of situations and I look at people who have tank crashes because their power went out and they didn't have a generator, I like to tell people like, hey, let's look at this crash. What died? How much money did you lose in this particular crash? It's not the end all be all, but when you start adding things up, you're like, wow, I could have just bought a generator and this would have never happened. Or I could have had an apex or some kind of system in place that could have warned me early on of the alkalinity spikes, or maybe a dead pump or the water level's too high in the sump indicating that the return pump died. These are the type of things and warnings that we should have it set in place, especially if you're investing a lot of money into these much larger setups. I think anything 75 gallons and above, if you're really investing money in, you should definitely consider having some of these backup systems in place. So just food for thought, and for anybody else who's building a tank at the moment. So with that, hopefully this helped you, and good luck with your setup, and hopefully it helped anybody else who might be going through the same issue. Now, with that being said, if you want to support the channel, head over to fishofhex.com. There's a bunch of coral sales, 3D printing. You guys know the deal with that. Appreciate the support, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.